Hi, I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics and Fantastic Four Grand Design. And today I want to talk a little bit about Batman the Killing Joke by Alan Moore, Brian Bolland, and John Higgins. More specifically about Grant Morrison's theory about what the ending of the comic means. The Cartoonist Kayfabe channel, Ed and Jim there, they just did an interview with Brian Bolland where they went through page by page with him, Batman the Killing Joke. And it's an excellent video. I recommend you go check it out if you haven't already. Towards the end, they briefly touch on the Grant Morrison theory. They asked Brian Bolland about it. He said that, it wasn't anything he was aware of while he was making it, and that, once you make a work of art and put it out into the world, it sort of belongs to the world. And so if someone comes up with an interpretation that makes sense to them, it's perfectly valid, and sort of left it at that. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about that Grant Morrison theory, because for me, it's really the first time that it sort of shows me the power of good comics criticism, that really great comics criticism can elevate a work. It can transform a work. It can make aspects of a work that were invisible to most of the audience all of a sudden an integral part. And when I heard Grant Morrison talk about Batman the Killing Joke, it completely changed my appreciation of this work for the better. So just a little bit about what that Grant Morrison theory is, if you haven't heard it before. This is The Killing Joke by Alan Moore, Brian Bolland, and John Higgins. When I was a kid, this was one of the first comics that I picked up when I started going to a comics shop. It was really the hot book of the time, and they had like posters of it up on the wall and multiple copies with multiple printings and multiple different colors for the verbiage on the cover, and it was sort of the talk of the shop. It was one of my first purchases at the comic book store. Prior to that, I'd get my comics from 7-Eleven and places like that. So basically, it's this sort of typical of 80s comics, the sort of thing that Alan Moore or Frank Miller would make. It was sort of a compelling, frightening, disturbing, and quite, highly, well-executed Batman story. Biff, Bam, Pow, the superheroes have grown up. And so this one, it's really well done, beautifully drawn, beautifully paced Batman story. And Batman goes into Arkham Asylum. You can see very stylish, the sort of team that would maybe do like a Judge Dredd story, have now come over to American comics and are doing work for DC. And so it starts out, there were these two guys in a lunatic asylum. Hello, I came to talk. I've been thinking lately about you and me, about what's going to happen to us in the end. We're going to kill each other, aren't we? Fnap. Perhaps you'll kill me, perhaps I'll kill you, perhaps sooner, perhaps later. I just wanted to know that I'd made a genuine attempt to talk things over and avert that outcome. Just once. Fnap. Are you listening to me? It's life and death that I'm discussing here. Maybe my death, maybe yours. I don't fully understand why ours should be such a fatal relationship, but I don't want your murder on my hands. And so, Batman realizes that he had this whole speech prepared to try and avert this inevitable catastrophe that he sees coming if their relationship continues on the course that it's on. But he's talking to an imposter Joker, and that the real Joker has escaped, and he's cooking something up. He's planning something especially nasty. And so the story becomes a sort of origin story of the Joker with these flashbacks to how he became the Joker, and then it cuts back to the modern day, and the Joker's involved in this big scheme that he's planning. Batman is brooding in the Batcave, looking over his files on the Joker, just trying to get to the bottom of it, and he's no closer to a solution than he was the day he met him. And so then here's the sort of centerpiece of this story, and sort of the most lasting fallout. The Joker comes into Barbara and James Gordon's apartment, and he shoots Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, and he shoots her, and it seems like she'll never walk again. And he takes off her clothes, takes pictures, and uses those pictures and the harm that he's done to her to torture her father, Jim Gordon. Batman visits her in the hospital, and the Joker, has gone too far, and it's time to get him. And so the Joker's big plan is he's going to torture Jim Gordon, and that the Joker has a theory that anybody can have a bad day and become a homicidal maniac like the Joker did. The Joker was a nice guy. He had a bad day and became a homicidal maniac. And so he's going to try to prove that by doing the same thing to Jim Gordon, sort of this incredibly sober, level-headed guy. He's going to torture him in this way. He goes through this fun house and sees, all the horrible pictures that the Joker's taken, and Batman's on the trail, and it's all leading up to this this confrontation, a confrontation between the Joker and Batman back in the past before he became the Joker, and then a confrontation between Batman and Joker in the present. Here's the birth of the Joker, just terrifying. Batman pulls up, and then we get a return to that speech that he gave at the beginning. Hello, I came to talk. I've been thinking lately about you, about me, about what's going to happen to us in the end. We're going to kill each other, aren't we? So this message is being delivered again and again that they're going to kill each other. It's inevitable. These two lunatics, these two guys in a lunatic asylum. Batman finds Jim Gordon, and Jim Gordon's okay. He has not cracked. And now Batman's going through this fun house, complete with all these traps, punji sticks, this Hall of Mirrors. And we get this great battle and confrontation between Batman and the Joker. I don't know that I've ever seen a better one. The one in Dark Knight Returns is pretty great too. But, this is really nice. And when Batman 89 came out, I was sort of expecting to see some version of this. And I was a little disappointed that the Joker in Batman 89 didn't put up as much of a fight as the Joker does here. He really, with a series of tricks and pranks, really, gets the better of Batman, up until Batman sort of turns the tide and goes into full superhero mode, knocks him out. As a last desperate effort, pulls out his gun, and click, click, click. It's a joke gun. The smile's gone. The Joker, the Joker has gone from mania to depression. Now they're having that talk that Batman was trying to have with him about how we could work together. I could rehabilitate you. You needn't be out there on the edge anymore. You needn't be alone. We don't have to kill each other. What do you say? No, I'm sorry, but no, it's too late for that. Far too late. Ha ha ha. It's funny. This situation, it reminds me of a joke. And so the Joker tells a joke, and this is the titular killing joke. You see, there were these two guys in a lunatic asylum, and one night they decide they don't like living in an asylum anymore. They decide they're going to escape. So, they get up onto the roof, and there, just across this narrow gap, they see the rooftops of the town stretching away in the moonlight. Now, the first guy, he jumps right across with no problem, but his friend daren't make the leap. You see, he's afraid of falling. So then the first guy has an idea. He says, hey, I have my flashlight with me. I'll shine it across the gap between the buildings, and you can walk along the beam and join me. But the second guy just shakes his head. He says, what do you think I am, crazy? You turned it off when I was halfway across. And so the Joker starts laughing. And pretty soon, Batman starts laughing. And they share this little laugh. The most surprising outcome you could imagine after this, hellish, day, the Joker, doing the worst you could imagine. The worst thing that's probably ever happened in a superhero comic up to this point. I'm sure they've topped it since then, but they share this moment of laughter and camaraderie, just sort of seeing the absurdity of the situation they're in, at least for the moment, before going back to their normal roles. Batman goes back to his Batcave. The Joker goes back to his cell, we assume, as the story ends, as it begins with the raindrops. No big deal. And so it's this very intense, very interesting story, but still, it's a Batman story, and it's within the continuity of Batman. And Alan Moore has kind of disavowed this story as he has much of his body of work. that it's basically a trifle because it's part of DC continuity. This story, was continued and built off of, and Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, never does walk again, and then. From other writers and artists, as her story develops, she becomes the character Oracle. She becomes sort of this, computer hacker character, this sort of digital goddess that helps the various superheroes get out of trouble and defeat the bad guys, using her computer skills. Grant Morrison has a different interpretation. Now, these two guys in a lunatic asylum, they're Batman and the Joker. I think, even just sort of a normal reading of this, you'd see that. And the Joker's telling this story, and these two guys he's describing in the joke, they're also sort of, him and Batman. These two guys in a lunatic asylum, they decide they don't like this asylum anymore. They don't like this relationship that they have, this merry-go-round that they continually find themselves on, and then the building stretching away into the moonlight, and there's the Joker with exactly that, and he's telling the story, and he says, "You turned the flashlight off when I was halfway across. Basically, when you turn off this light, I'll be walking across this beam of light, and when you turn off this light, that'll be the end for me. I'll die." And so they have their laugh. And they're laughing, and Batman. They're both laughing, and Batman's smile becomes maniacal, and they become mirrors of each other in this moment. The normal reading of the book, it just lasts for that moment. But if you can sort of imagine that the ha 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 and the wee of the siren, and it continues, and the ha 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 continues. And then all of a sudden, the ha 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 stops. And it hasn't. It's not like the scene has gone silent. We still have the ee of the siren still going, but the laughter has stopped rather suddenly. And then the light goes off. This light, when the light goes off, I die. We have it here. And so basically, what's happened is, Batman. According to Grant Morrison, Batman has killed the Joker. He's strangled him or snapped his neck or something. And the light has gone out and the Joker's dead. And the killing joke of the title is the joke that the Joker just told him. His thesis of pushing someone to the brink, it didn't work on James Gordon, but it worked on Batman. He pushed Batman, who's already kind of a character on the edge. He's pushed him beyond, and it was the joke. It was everything, prior to the joke was bad enough, but this joke pushed him right over the edge. It's the killing joke. It's the joke that leads Batman to kill the Joker, and as a result, kill Batman. Batman's career is over. A Batman who murders can no longer be allowed to function. So that's how Grant Morrison reads this. And so that this is actually, at a time when Alan Moore was creating endings, he created the final Superman story. He created, Watchmen with a beginning, middle, and end. And now he's created the final Batman story. How the Joker finally pushes Batman to the point where he kills him. So this, very, very well done and very interesting one-shot goes from being, sort of just that into being this, very important part of Batman's story. And it just, sort of takes on a weight. With that interpretation that Grant Morrison had that I've never heard from anyone else prior to that, and I'm sure never would have occurred to me, in 100 readings. But Grant Morrison is just that kind of that kind of mind, and and that through an act of comics criticism has sort of transformed this work. Now, maybe that was Alan Moore's intent all along. Maybe Brian Bolland was not aware of this, but maybe Alan Moore was. Or maybe it's something that was unintentional but just sort of happened, and so it's maybe the result of Alan Moore's unconscious mind combined with Brian Bolland's unconscious mind, and maybe a combination of the choices that they made ended up creating a work that, though it wasn't their intention, still does that. You read the work, and you read the work for what it is, and the creators can tell you any kind of story they want to, but if it's there on the page, it's there on the page. And it's just, it just elevated this work for me. Now, the fact that Grant Morrison points this out, so maybe my guess is that it was Alan Moore's intention, that this was, he is someone who writes on multiple layers. And I think he wrote this understanding that it could be read, at face value, but that, everything is there to get that more radical reading, the reading that Batman kills the Joker, and this is the final Batman and Joker story, and that Alan Moore understood that, at this time, DC never would have let him run that. They'd let him, do all the crazy stuff that happens prior to that, but they wouldn't let him tell the final, Batman kills the Joker story. But maybe if I do it in a way that's so subtle, and I don't even tell my collaborator, I don't tell my editor, there's nothing in the script which gets approved by my editor, there's nothing that blatantly says it, but when you put all the pieces together, it's all there. Maybe for Alan Moore, it's like, this will be my little secret. I won't tell anybody, but it'll be there. And then along comes Grant Morrison, who, Alan Moore has expressed some annoyance with from time to time. Along comes this, annoying know-it-all who, from Moore's perspective, which copies him. Alan Moore, I read an interview with him where he's talking about how he and Michael Moorcock talk about, which one of us does Grant Morrison rip off the most, me or you? Spoils the whole thing, lets the cat out of the bag, this little secret that's there for anybody who could find out, and maybe nobody will find out, but, his own private joke, his own, sort of the sort of thing the Joker might do. I mean, for me as a comics creator, there are things I'll never discuss about my work because I want them to be a mystery. And I assume Alan Moore, has those moments too, and this would be one. He's got to get this script past his editor, so he can't say in the script, oh, by the way, Joker dies at the end. It's the last Joker story. It's the last Batman story. And at this time, Moore also wrote an essay for, an introduction in Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns. And he talks about how important endings are, and that, the great superhero stories need an ending. If they get an ending, then that will sort of elevate them into the realm of mythology and legend. The reason Moore disavows this work that he says is he feels that although it's like a really good, Batman and Joker story, he feels like it's not anything more than that. And that to him, for a story to be successful, it should have something for you to bring into your real world, some kind of applicable lesson. And without that, he finds stories to be useless. And so he feels that he sort of failed in that regard with this. Now, I feel very differently than Alan Moore about that. I have an aversion to stories that have a lesson or helpful information. And it goes back to childhood. I grew up with the He-Man toys, and they came with these mini comics where, He-Man was basically like, this savage barbarian who was, at war with this, demonic skeletal ghoul from another dimension and his army of beast men. And then they made a cartoon out of it. And at the end of every episode, this, savage barbarian would, tell you some kind of lesson, tell you to eat your vegetables or brush your teeth or whatever. And it just, I hated it. I did not like that at all. I felt condescended to, talked down to. It felt like a betrayal. And I think for that reason, I've always been sort of distrustful of lessons in work, in shows and stories. And so I for the comics that I make, I don't want anyone to learn a fucking thing from my comics. I just want to blow your mind, entertain you, but I don't want you to learn a fucking thing from them. And so I don't agree with Alan Moore in this sense. So even if maybe, you can't bring any of the things that you in this story into your real life, I think it's still valuable, still a worthwhile thing, and still, an excellent example. And with this added weight of this being the last Batman story and Batman crossing over and becoming almost like the new Joker, I think it's elevated into rarefied air. If this is something that was completely unintended and came about accidentally in this work, this ending that Grant Morrison sees, there's another example that's kind of similar to that. In Watchmen, Captain Metropolis reportedly dies, and so does Hooded Justice, and we never find, and Hooded Justice's body is never found, so they never find out for sure. And it's hinted within the text that that actually the comedian killed Hooded Justice, but there's a panel early in the story of a couple that are out to dinner who look very much like an older version of Captain Metropolis and Hooded Justice, having dinner together. Dave Gibbons was asked about that, and he said, "Oh no, he just drew two people, and it didn't. He wasn't trying to draw Hooded Justice or Captain Metropolis. So there was nothing in the script about that either. So now we sort of have this secret, possible, happy ending for these two characters in the story who you thought for sure were going to have horrible ends, even though it was never spelled out. It's there for you to take or leave. But obviously Alan Moore isn't commenting on it one way or the other. But so these works, these things show up and turnabout is fair play. There's also like a theory about Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman that Leo Quintum is actually a time-traveling reformed Lex Luthor from the future, and that the events of the story of All-Star Superman, when Lex Luthor at the end gets this sort of larger perspective, and Grant Morrison, as far as I know, hasn't commented on that theory either. So recognition is a gift as well. That the creation is important, but it's also important to have people who can recognize the greatness and understand the work, and then share that understanding and knowledge with others to enrich their enjoyment. And so I'm grateful to Alan Moore and Brian Bolland and John Higgins for creating this work, and I'm grateful to Grant Morrison for helping me appreciate it to an even greater degree. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics and Fantastic Four Grand Design, and I'll see you next time.